What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to Liam Teaches Chess. This is me continuing my series on my quest to reach at least 2,000 USCF. This is rounds 3 and 4 of the Gulf Coast Open. It was a 5-round tournament. I always knew I was going to only play 4 rounds because I planned to watch football Sunday morning, so I was going to drive back and skip the 5th game. Um, the first 2 games were game 60. This game is game 90 with a 30-second increment, so it is FIDE rated as well. Funny enough, I have a pretty high FIDE rating compared to my USCF. Haven't played that many games. Had a pretty good tournament in New York City before COVID happened, so was like 2060 FIDE at some point. Playing with black pieces here against a kid who was rated 1990. My rating was 1850 to 1900 going into the tournament. So he opens up with e4. I play a couple things against e4. Sometimes I play the Sicilian. Sometimes I play the Scandinavian. Sometimes the Caro-Kann. Here I chose to play the Scandinavian. My opponent took, and I played knight f6. I like to play the knight f6 Scandinavian, where you're hoping white plays something like c4 and greedily tries to hold on to the pawn, and then you just get a free gambit here with a move like c6, and you get fast development, and you get to attack as black. So that's my hope always. I've never gotten that in a rated over the board game. My opponent played the best move, bishop b5. This is the line you need to know as black. I play bishop d7, blocking the check. He retreats to c4, and I move my bishop to g4. So if you're new to chess, you may have been told you only want to move a piece once at the game. You want to get all of your pieces into the game. You want to castle your king. Clearly, both me and my opponent are breaking the opening principles because there is theory at play here. My opponent plays f3, the best move. And there's 2 main moves here for black, bishop f5 or bishop c8. I chose bishop c8 just because it's kind of simple. The thing you have to be aware of about f5 is stuff like g4. You move the bishop to c8, and then stuff like g5, harassing your knight further. And c8, which is a funny looking because you undevelop your bishop back to the home square. But the point is that we are threatening to win back our pawn. White plays knight c3, holding on to the pawn, developing his knight. And I play knight e to d7. My opponent plays knight e2. By playing f3, you can no longer place a knight there. And here I play knight b6, both attacking the bishop and now attacking the d-pawn 3 times to win back the pawn. And you cannot defend this pawn at all, right? You can't play knight f4 because I'll take your bishop. My opponent plays bishop b3. And we played a5. I've looked at this with with an engine, I don't know, a couple years ago. And I just knew that this a5 move was, the engine likes to do this with like castling. A4 would win the bishop because we attack these squares. And if they play a3, you play a4. And the point is, this pawn is controlling these 2 pawns for like an endgame. We've gained space on the queen side. I don't know. It's all pretty engine-like here. Against a5, my opponent wanted to play a4, stopping me from pushing for the pawn, but creating this potential hole in his camp where the pawn can no longer attack b4. I take back my pawn. He castles, and I play e6. Wasn't really sure about e5 versus e6. E5 has merit because it gains space, but I was a little bit worried about moves like d4. And the point is, if I take, I'm opening up this rook to my king. My king is still 2 turns away from castling. The other thing about e5 is it allows this bishop to stare at the king. So that's why I decided to play more solid with e6, stopping my bishop from coming to this diagonal, but defending my knight, preparing for my bishop to move and castle. My opponent plays d4, grabbing space in the center of the board, and allowing his bishop to develop. I play bishop e7. He plays knight e4. His hope is that I'm going to take and allow him to capture back towards the center and get 2 center pawns, kick my knight around, gain space, open up the rook to my king. Of course, I'm not interested in that, so I simply castle. He plays c3 here, and I think this is where my opponent started going wrong. C4 is a more typical move where, okay, it's not as solid as c3, and I see, players who don't understand this position play a lot this way, where they just want to have a pawn chain. They want to be solid. They don't feel like they're making mistakes. But c4, when you're playing as white, you're usually trying to win. C4, gain space in the center, harasses my knight. Maybe I would have traded here. Maybe I would have played knight b6. Maybe I would have played knight b4. I can see why he wouldn't want to play c4 too, where you think you're giving me this b4 square, but you can probably find a way to trade away this knight eventually. And again, you can try to gain more space. So after c3, I played b6, allowing my bishop has no future on this diagonal. So my bishop's either going to come to b7 or it's going to come to a6. He played bishop c2, rerouting the bishop to point at my king. And I played bishop a6, pinning the knight to the rook for now. I thought my opponent here could have started, he could have kind of thrown caution to the wind and started doing stuff like g4, h4, g5. And it's a little bit scary to move the pawns in front of your king, but this bishop points at my king. This bishop points at my king. You got these knights that can jump into attack. The queen can join the action. The rook can join the fun. So if I was playing white, I maybe play something like king h1 to prepare stuff like pawn storming the opponent's king. But my opponent played rook f2, and it is possible to get yourself in trouble on this diagonal. So something to be aware of. And here I play the best move, which is c5. The point of c5, my hope is that they're going to take. And when I take back, I'm going to have the b file to put pressure on this weak b pawn, to try to stop the bishop from developing, activate my rook, try to play on the queen side where my pieces are kind of pointed. And he did take. I don't think taking is good. I think you just need to sit tight, maybe king h1, maybe bishop d2, try to get this rook in the game. But he did take. I took back with the pawn. Of course, I'm not taking back with the bishop because I'm not pinning the rook. The knight can take my bishop. I was calculating things like, what if I take the knight here? Knight takes, pawn takes, bishop takes, pawn takes, bishop takes. And it's usually not considered good to trade 2 minor pieces for a rook. So, bishop for bishop, rook for rook, rook versus a knight and bishop. Usually that's better for the side with the minor pieces because they can control more squares. But I simply took back, being patient here. Maybe I'm going to play stuff like c4, trying to clamp down on this pawn duo, have one pawn control 2, and maybe allow my bishop to come on this diagonal. He plays knight g3, and I play queen c7, preparing for this rook to join the action, perhaps putting pressure on h2 with my bishop, defending the c-pawn. He plays queen e1, and I play rook a b8, putting pressure on b2. This bishop is very annoying. You can see how active this bishop is, seeing all these squares in my opponent's camp. My opponent traded knights here. I take back with the knight, and he plays bishop g5, pinning my knight. I play h6, asking this bishop where it's going to go, and perhaps creating some lift for my king later. Not right now, though. He ended up trading the bishop for the knight, and I took back with the bishop. So now I have the bishop pair as well, which is considered an advantage in chess. He only has one bishop. I'm also attacking b2. I meant to mention here, bishop g5 is a good move by my opponent because you may think, "Oh, I can't take the B pawn," or, "I can't develop this bishop," is what I was thinking, because if he moves it, I win his B pawn. But if I do rook takes B2, this would be a blunder due to the discovered check of bishop takes H7 check. The king takes back, and the rook discovered an attack on my rook. So I would lose the rook and probably the game being down the exchange here. So of course I did not blunder like that. I played H6. I secured the bishop pair, and my opponent played Queen E4, trying to checkmate me. I only have one defense, and that is G6. And my opponent played Knight H5, where I cannot take this knight, or I get checkmated with the queen and bishop battery. So I think for a little bit here, and I play bishop H8. I do not want white to be allowed to win back one of the bishops. I want to keep the bishop pair. So that's why I played bishop H8. Kind of a sneaky bishop, easy to forget about. And my opponent plays knight F4. I was more worried about the move queen G4, where I can't take this knight. The pawn is pinned to me. I can't play anything like F5. Queen takes G6, hits the board. So I thought Queen G4 was a better try. You're threatening stuff like bishop takes, pawn takes, queen takes. You cannot block with the queen because the knight and queen attack. You could maybe block with the bishop, but maybe I lose this pawn. So I thought this was a good try, or, maybe finding a way to move your knight and then playing H4, H5 as well, trying to attack my king. But he played knight F4, and that kind of let me get back in the game. I thought, I'm better here. I just have to find out how to defend. And I thought Queen B7 was a really good move, where I want to trade queens. I'm trying to chase the queen off of this diagonal to put pressure on my king. So I want this queen to move somewhere. And I'm threatening B2. Trading queens would not be good for white because I just take with something like the rook. And now there's no threats to my king. I'm not worried about anything. And I'm simply going to double the rooks and play against the weakness on B2. Something like, rook B1 or B3. You may think you're fine here, but I can play stuff like C4. Taking would be considered not very good, where now you have this weakness for me to pile up on. And if you sit tight with something like rook B1, well, here you would blunder your C pawn. Or no, first I need to pile up on the rook and the B pawn. Maybe you move your bishop, and now I can take, I guess you would move your bishop this way. It's not easy. So I can chase this away. But just for an example, bishop D1. And the point is bishop takes C3, where now you defended your B pawn twice, but you still lose the C pawn, and you will lose your B pawn because your pawn was pinned. My opponent had a shot here that neither me nor him noticed, and that is knight takes G6. The point being, after I take on E4, he has the intermediate move, knight E7, checking my king. And if instead, after knight takes G6, I do something like pawn takes F6, he has moves like queen takes E6, queen takes G6, and I might be getting checkmated here. Something like this. Looks scary for black. He didn't see that though, nor did I. He played queen E3. And I take on B2, and I feel like I'm just crushing now, where I'm attacking your rook, so you need to do something about that. I'm double attacking your C pawn, and my dream still is to get a bishop on D4 and pin your pieces to your king. He plays rook D1. I take the C pawn, so now I am up 2 pawns. He plays queen E4, and here I thought for a while, because I have a lot of tempting moves. I have stuff like rook b4, where I calculated something like queen c6, bishop b7, queen d7, and then like I could have traded the pieces like this. I'm also calculating stuff like, what if I just play bishop b7 right away, chase the queen off the diagonal? Anything like this I would trade because I'm up 2 pawns. Queen e2. Um, Maybe I chase this knight away and then play bishop d4. And I eventually settled on playing queen e5 because I thought I found a clever way to force a queen trade where I'm attacking your knight, I'm attacking your queen. You can't play something like queen e2. I would just trade queens or take a free knight. And there's no way to maintain contact with this knight and defend it because I attack these squares, these squares, these squares. So after queen e5, though, my opponent finds the tactic from earlier that we both missed, which is knight takes g6. Same problem. Even worse now. If I take queen takes check, queen g7, something like queen e6, where you hit my king and win back a piece. So instead, I trade queens. I'm still up a pawn. I still feel like I'm winning. I have the bishop pair. My opponent plays knight e7, and I play king h7, which is a key move to play, not king g7, because after king g7, they can just take back the queen. But king h7, a little unusual because white can take my queen with check, but then I would be able to play f5, where I attack the bishop would move, and now I finally get in the move bishop d4, winning the exchange, and I'm up a pawn. This should be easily winning. So instead, after king h7, my opponent plays pawn takes e4, threatening a discovered attack. I play bishop d4, winning one of the rooks. He played e5, and now I played king g7, getting out of the check. My opponent sacks his rook for my bishop on d4. I take back, and he plays rook f3. And, my opponent has I have like an hour and 15 minutes. You started with an hour and 30 minutes. You gain 30 seconds each move. My opponent's down to like 20 minutes. So he's been thinking a lot more than me. I should really take my time here and make sure I'm being accurate. I was thinking about stuff like d3, just trying to trade because I'm still up the exchange. And maybe I should have played d3, cutting off the bishop. I decided to play bishop b7, where I thought I was being clever. I attack the rook, and more importantly, I dominate the knight now, where this knight, these are the squares it could maybe move to. And I attack all those squares, so I simply dominate the knight and then win the knight. But I realized after rook g3, not a move I really calculated. So this is kind of lazy by me after having a commanding position, a winning position. I was very worried after king h8, bishop h7, of course. Can't play king h7. So after king h8, what I realized I missed is not rook g3, but rook h3. And white is threatening to win my h pawn and maybe even checkmate me, right? Getting in here. So I did calculate here. I decided to play f5, where there's a lot you have to calculate here. You needed to calculate rook takes, g6, king g7, rook g6 check, knight keeps the rook safe, king f7, or instead of rook g6, rook takes e6, king f7, bishop takes f5, defending the rook, defending the knight. I don't, maybe I have bishop e4 trying to decoy the bishop and win the rook. It's all very crazy. Thankfully, my opponent didn't do any of that. He just won back the exchange. My opponent mentioned to me after the game, by the way, that I have a move here, and that move is rook e8, where I am attacking the knight. Still can't move this knight anywhere. And now, if rook takes h6, king g7, rook h7, defended by the bishop, and king f8, and the knight is going to be won. Something like rook h8 would allow me to take the knight, and something like knight g6, I simply take the knight, and you don't win back my bishop because the rook keeps it safe. So, not the most accurate find by me, but I thought f5 just had to be played. Um, the point is if you take on passant, rook takes f6, ooh, defends everything, and I'm still probably going to win this knight. But I was really happy when he played knight g6 because even though I'm giving back the exchange, I am up one pawn versus my opponent. And so I thought this was kind of like a relatively stress-free win where we have same colored bishops, so it's not very drawish. And I simply play king g7. He takes back the exchange. I take with the rook. And, I don't really have any weaknesses. I'm probably going to try to get in on the g file. This pawn is going to be a problem. I'm going to play things like bishop b4, d3, get in here, try to win some more pawns. My opponent played king f2. I played rook d8, putting it behind the passed pawn. He plays rook g3. I play king f7. He plays rook h3. So he's going to be annoying about this. And I played rook g8, where the point is if you take my pawn, you would lose this pawn with check. I'd take your bishop. You would win my bishop. But I'm still up a pawn here. Your king is caught out of the game. So that would have been winning for me. I thought maybe my opponent could try to be annoying here and play stuff like g3, but then your rook is kind of out of the game where I simply defend the pawn. He played rook g3, which I thought was just a losing decision. He is very low on time at this point, though, because I simply trade and play a move like bishop e4. You cannot trade and then play something like king f4 because I'm winning for many reasons here. Pushing either of the pawns is winning. For example, king e3. You have to play king f3, and then I simply march my king into the game, win a pawn, and I will promote. You can never go for one of these pawns because then the other pawn goes in queens. So after bishop e4, he plays bishop d1. And I realize I'm not going to make progress going this way. The bishop's here. I'm not going to make progress this way. The king is here. So I need to come over here. So king e7, king f2. I'm not worried about him going this way. I would just be faster. King f2, king d7, g3, king c6, bishop b3, trying to stop my king. Bishop d5, bishop d1, bishop c4, covering that diagonal. King f3, king d5, and king f4. And the key thing here is bishop f3 would be a problem because I don't win this e-pawn, but I simply play d3. And now if you play bishop f3, I simply march into the position and go queen my pawn. So he plays g4. He's just kind of desperate. I knew this move didn't do anything, so I just took. Takes back with the bishop. I play king d4. Bishop f3. Bishop b3. Bishop b3 just speeds everything up where not only do I threaten this pawn, but more importantly, I cover the queening square so the bishop cannot blockade the passed pawn. And he just has to go for my other pawn. He plays king g4. I take his e-pawn. I don't even need to go get this bishop right away. I first take the e-pawn, not wanting to lose both of these pawns. He plays king h5. I push to d2, takes on h6. I queen. He sacks his bishop. I take back. Plays h4. I take his a-pawn. King g5, bishop e8, h5. I sack the bishop for the pawn. And then I push a pawn, get a queen. Remember, move a queen a knight's distance away, and you will be on the pattern to checkmating the king. Trapped him on the edge. And now I just march my king to the game, and I execute the triangle checkmate. So really nice win. After, two well-played games by me that were disappointing losses. you know? Good to get a win. Round 4 in the morning, which I was expecting to play as the white pieces since I just played a game with the black pieces, but that did not happen. I ended up playing with the black pieces again. Again, it's Sunday morning. I'm trying to get back for football. I'm playing my friend, a guy by the name of Ray. We played a team tournament before, so I was a little familiar with him. He's familiar with me. He saw what I played the last round. Plays E4. And I thought maybe I should play the Sicilian since he just saw me play the Scandinavian, but I played D5. Why not? Let's do it again. Took knight F6, D4, takes on D5, knight F3, bishop F5, bishop D3. Kind of just have to trade the bishops, which I don't really want to do because I develop his queen for him. And I play E6. I wasn't fully refreshed on this line, but something like queen B5 is considered a mistake because black can play knight C6 and queen takes B7 would be a blunder due to knight D4, where we are going to win this pawn likely or trap your queen. Something like knight A3 might run into rook B8, where the queen can't go here, can't go here, can't go here because of the knight, can't take because of this knight. So white has to play something like queen B5 here. You take with check. Now the king can't castle. And then you probably just defend your knight before you take this rook. So instead, he castles, and I play c5. Now, after queen b5, I can meet it with queen d7. I think c5 is a move to play, but I think it's a little hasty. I think what I'm supposed to do here is be a little lame, either play knight c6 or c6. This is a very common structure in the Scandinavian where you're just really solid. There's no checks. You develop, you castle, you get a game. It's a position I'm familiar with. This is what I wish I went for. I played c5. He played knight c3. Again, I have an opportunity here. I think c4 probably is the best move, but knight c3, I think I should simply take, have the queen take, play something like queen c7 to defend this pawn, and then again, bishop e7 and castle, and I'm fine. But I play bishop e7, trying to castle. It's a morning game. I'm kind of on autopilot. He takes with the knight, and again, I have one last chance to be okay. And honestly, this is inexcusable. I don't know what's going on. Take with the queen, and okay, yeah, they can play c4, but you just play something like queen d7, queen d8. Who cares? They can build up pressure. You simply castle, you know, or you get out of after rook d1. You can also, if queen d7, rook d1, you can play something like queen c7, and here you either take with the bishop or you castle. And I would have been relatively fine. Instead, though, I take with the pawn. I remember thinking and being like, "Oh man, I have to get stuck with this isolated pawn." And now I'm just worse because white takes my c pawn, and I have to castle. And I realize I'm just not going to be able to defend this pawn. So not only do I have this weakness, an isolated pawn is considered a strength if you can play dynamically, protect the pawn, get some attacks going, take advantage of the open lines. It's a weakness if you can't defend it, and white can simply win it. And yeah, they can simply win it with stuff like rook c1. He plays b4, holding on to his c pawn. And I play like a5. There's no real, like knight c6 might run into b5. Maybe I should have tried that. Maybe I should have played knight d7 and just accepted I'm losing this pawn. But I'm already like much worse in the opening. The game's barely been playing. We're playing, game 90. So really, really, really sloppy stuff by me. I play a5, play c3, play bishop f6, plays b5, play a4. Like this, I'm worried about stuff like c6. And if my knight's not playing, my rook's not playing. So this is just terrible. Bishop e3, rook a5, rook b1, rook e8, rook d1, queen e7. He takes. I take back, so I'm down a pawn, and he plays bishop f4, and I'm just in huge trouble. I can't move my knight because he attacks this square twice. I really don't have many moves at all. So I play a3, trying against something like bishop b2 and rook takes b5. But yeah, he just plays rook b3. Rook lifting, and after rook e3, I know I'm losing, but we play it out. Queen f8, bishop d6, bishop e7, bishop takes e7, and I'm pretty sure I resigned here. The point is rook takes, queen takes, queen d8, queen takes, rook takes, checkmate, taking advantage of my back rank issues. And if instead I play queen takes, of course, I lose my queen and I get checkmated all the same. So I ended up going 1-3. You know, I guess getting a win is good when you're the lowest rated in the section, right? Beat someone 150 points higher rated than me, but relatively disappointing tournament where I definitely like losing round one was really inexcusable. Losing round two was like, I didn't think I played that well, but then I battled back and I was winning. So kind of a sloppy game there. Got a good win round three and then played terrible in round four. But at the same time, I'm kind of happy that it happened because now I'm a lot more familiar of just what to do on this line. You know, like the Scandinavian opening, it's not considered good at the top level. Why do I play it? Well, I play it because I don't always want to. I don't have infinite time. I don't want to be memorizing a lot of Sicilian theory. I want to take opponents out of book, and I want to play positions I'm, comfortable with. So, is what it is. I think I gained like one rating point from this tournament. Went from after being 1900 again, dropped down to 1850. After playing well, but again having sloppy losses, and I think I went to like 1851. So had fun, learned a lot, and will continue both with the beginner videos and more advanced lessons. Appreciate you guys. Please be sure to like and subscribe, and any comments left helps the channel grow as well. Peace out.